Welcome back, everyone. Today our main goal will be to integrate Slack notifications into our project, but until then let's do some more additions to our project. I'm going to start with this apps controller. I want to paginate the amount of reports we get per app information. So if we go back to our postman in here, we will get some information about the app ID number 1. You'll see that we get the app information and also the reports. It currently looks like this. It's just an array of all the information we need. If we go back to our code and save it, let's go back to Postman, send this request again. You already see that now it's paginated and the format of our result has changed. So we have current page here. All our data as before is in this key called data. Then we have first page, URL, some other links in here. So this is something to keep in mind when we'll switch to making changes in our front end. The next thing I want to do is to implement the search functionality. So you can see here we have a new function called search. We require the search query to be at least of 3 characters. Then we take a look in the database and see if there's anything matching for our title and the store ID in the database. And if there's anything matching, we'll return it and we'll limit this response to maximum of 50 items. Let's go take a look now in our postman. If we search for something that doesn't exist, we'll get an empty array back. If there's something that would match, then we'll get a result. So you can see we get all the fields that we actually need. Cool. Now let's go back to our code. Now let's switch to our reports controller. And here I want to create a new function that will return only the reports that were made by our user. So you can see we're querying the report in here, we're getting the needed fields, we're adding the store app relationship, and again we paginate it to only show a maximum of 10 items. So now let's go to our API routes and take a look in there. We want to create a new endpoint under the reports group, and it's going to be mine, reports controller, mine. Okay, now let's go to our postman, see if that works. Reports, mine. Okay, so now we're getting a list of reports that were created by me, together with their status and all the other information. Okay, that looks good. Next, let's start setting up our Slack environment. So for this, you will actually need to have a Slack account, like I have here. I've also created a channel called FMG. And for sending messages to Slack, we're going to use a library by Spati, I don't know how you actually pronounce it, called Laravel Slack Alerts. So let's actually install this into our project. We go back in here, let's open a terminal and write that. Okay, now that's done. Let's close everything. Next, let's go to our Slack API and actually create a Slack application. So if we go to this link over here, api.slack.com/apps, you'll get to this page. You'll have to log in, of course, and here's where you can actually create an app. So let's start with that. We want to create that from an app manifest. We're going to select our workspace, the one you're logged in already. Click next in here. I like using JSON in here. I'm going to call it FMG app. For now, I think I'll just leave these as they are. Okay. The next thing we want to do is to go here into incoming webhooks. We want to turn this on. And let's install this to our workspace. So in here, we're going to get to select the channel FMG. We're going to allow this app to use that channel. Okay, so now we have a webhook URL, which we're going to copy and then go back to our code. And this one we'll want to add into our environment variable. We're going to call it Slack alert webhook, which is going to be picked up by the package we've just installed, so nothing else needs to be done in here. Okay, let's go back to our reports controller. I want to do one thing in here first. I want to allow our users to create a report only when he has a rejected report or he doesn't have a report for that app already. So for that, we are going to change some stuff around. So in here, before we actually start creating a developer, we want to take a look if there is an existing report for this user. So we're looking for the reports and we're looking at a status. So 1 means that it was published and 0 means it's pending. So if we do have a published or a pending report for this exact app, then we are not allowing them to create another one. And we have another status where published is equals to -1. So if it is -1, it means that the report was rejected. So we allow the users to create another report for this exact app. Okay, let's save this in here and go lower. Now, after we finish creating everything we need for our app, we want to replace this code in here. So you can see that we're going to create another function called send Slack report moderation. And that new function looks like this. So let's just paste it in here. Let's import the class. Okay, if you go through the documentation for this package, you'll see that this is how you create a interactive blocks. So in here, you can see that we have a message saying new report added. We're adding in here the app title and the app store URL. Then we're telling it if it works offline. And then we also add a link to the fake ad if it exists. Then if we go lower, we can see the comment. And then we have 2 interactive buttons. So one of them is going to have a value of approved, and another one is going to have a value of rejected. So as you can see, this is going to happen after we create a new report. So let's go and test that out. Let's open Postman next. Let's go to creating a report. Let's send this request. Okay, you already have reported this app. Let's try a new app ID in here. So I just got a random one from the Play Store. Let's send this. So you can see we got a new message in here saying new report added. We have the link to the app, works offline, fake ad, and the comment. Cool. So we can actually, if we click on here, we go directly to the app, and then I can install it and review it a bit, and then give my publish or reject response over here. Now let's go back to our code. We want to actually receive these responses. Okay, so in order to interact with Slack, let's actually create a new controller. We're going to say art make controller. We're going to call this one Slack controller. Okay, let's close this. Let's close all of these files in here and go to our Slack controller. In here, we're going to write a new function called interact. Let's import our classes and HTTP. Okay, so what are we going to do in here? In here, we're going to receive a payload from Slack, and we're going to decode that payload in here. That payload also has a response URL, so we can respond to that interaction. Then from the action key in that response, we're going to explode it like this, because the response we're going to receive from responding in Slack is going to be something like this one, and what was it? Rejected, I think. So this is going to be our report ID, and this is going to be the status. So we're exploding this. So our first index is going to be the report ID, and the second index is going to be the published value. Okay, then we find the report by ID, and we are going to update the published value in here. Then we're going to return to respond to that interaction by replacing the original text. That's what this flag in here does, and our text is going to be report ID has been published or rejected. The next thing we need to do is to go to our API root and actually create an endpoint so that Slack can hit it. And this is going to be with the prefix of Slack, and is going to be interaction here, the function name, the URL name, and let's import the class in here. Okay, that looks great. Now this is not yet going to work because we need to actually go to Slack and we need to go in here, interactivity and shortcuts, and we need to enable the interactivity. So the buttons that we have in the Slack message are interactive, which means whenever we click on them, we need that button to send a request to a URL, right? So we can't actually say in here localhost because nobody knows about our localhost. It works only for us. So in order to expose our localhost to the entire internet, we need to actually use something. So I usually like using ngrok. So in order to do that, we're going to say ngrok and we're going to say HTTP 8000, which means that it's going to open an external link that is going to forward our localhost 8000. Okay. So now we can see we have a couple of links in here. We need just the HTTP one because our local server is not actually secure. So let's go to in here, put this link. Okay, now we can save changes. Now every time we click on one of those buttons, it will actually hit this URL in here. So this is going to be our base URL. If we go back to our code, we need to say to append Slack and interaction at the end. So let's go back in here. We're actually going to say /API because that's an API endpoint. I'm going to say Slack and then interaction. Okay, so let's save this. Now let's go back to our code. We can go to our Slack controller in here and the interact. I want to actually test it out. So let's say we're going to return something. Actually, we're going to return nothing, and we're going to say log debug, and we want to add this request payload to the Laravel logs. Okay, let's import that class. So now if we go back to our Slack and we want to respond to one of these, let's say publish. Okay, we can go back to our code and let's go take a look in this folder. So if you go to storage logs, you have a file called Laravel log. Okay, so here's how the request from Slack looks like. We can probably try and reformat it just a little bit so it makes more sense. Let's just add a space after all this. So we can see we're getting the username, the name, everything else about the channel, about the user who actually responded to that request, to that interaction. And in the end, we can see in here, we have the text for the button and the value. And there has to be an action. So if you look at the actions, we have an action ID. And in here, we can see the value that was actually sent to us. That's what we're using in our Slack controller in here. So we're going inside the actions, we're taking the first item and taking the value out of that. So this is what we're getting in here. Okay, cool. So now that we know how that works, let's go back to our Slack controller. Okay, let's remove these two lines from here. Let's save this. Let's actually take a look at our database. So right now we can see that we have our report with ID 27, which the published value is 0, which means it's pending. So now if we go to our Slack, let's click on publish in here. Okay, so you can see that that text that we're sending back completely replaces the previous one in this message. Now it says report ID 27 has been approved. Let's go to our database. Let's refresh this and we can see it says 1 here now. Okay, let's actually try the other one. So if we delete this, let's go back to our Postman, create another report. Okay, let's go to Slack. We've got another message in here. This time let's actually reject it. Okay, report ID has been rejected. Let's go to our database and we can see now the value is -1. Okay, so that works fine. Okay, now we have our Slack interaction working, but we do have an issue. And our issue is that this endpoint is actually not protected at all. So anyone can actually send a message to this endpoint and just screw up our database. So now we need to actually somehow protect this API endpoint And we're going to do that using a middleware. So let's open our terminal. And we're going to call our middleware. So we're going to art make middleware. We're going to call this Slack request. Okay, let's close this. Let's go to our Slack request. Actually, let's go to our kernel. And let's add this Slack request in here. We're going to say Slack request class. Okay, let's actually import our class. And we're going to add this middleware to our API. We're going to do it like this. Let's save this and go to our middleware. So this is the new one we just created. Now, if you go to the Slack documentation, they will actually tell you how to authenticate a message from Slack. So in order to do that, we're going to actually go to this basic information tab in here, and we need our signing secret. So we're going to show it, we're going to copy it, and let's go back to our code. Then let's go to our environment variables, which are in here. And we're going to call this Slack signing secret. Okay, we have this in our environment variables. Let's go to our config services and also add it in here. We're just going to call it Slack. And inside of it, we're going to have the signing secret. And this is going to match whatever we have in our environment variable. So if we search for this, it's here. Okay. Now let's close everything and just leave our middleware in here. And our middleware is going to be something standard that if you follow the documentation, you're basically going to end up with the same code. Let's import our classes in here. Okay. So what this is doing is basically looking at our signing secret, then it's looking at the header that's being sent by Slack, and Slack is sending multiple custom headers, this one, and basically you need to do some calculations to make sure that the signature is valid. Okay, so now let's take a look again at our API. We have this Slack request in here. Now let's go and create a new report. If we actually, we need to delete the latest one, so let's delete this one in here. Let's go back to Postman, create a report. Let's go to Slack and respond to this with a reject. Okay, this worked. Let's go to our database, and it's still working. Okay, we're now done with our backend. Let's switch to working on our front end. Okay, so first thing I want to do is to fix an error I made last time. I created this util mixin file and I put it in the helpers folder while it should be in the plugins folder. So probably all 15 of you were screaming at the screen at some point. Next, I want to create a new type, which is going to be called my report.ts. This is for the user page when we're going to see all our reports that we've submitted. Let's save this one. Next, we're going to our app details, and you can see how it looks right now, but we need to accommodate for that pagination. So now we do have our reports inside a data key right here. Let's save this and close. Now let's go to our helpers folder. And let's open the report service. And we want to add a new request for the user's reports only. Let's add this in here. We're going to say get request. Okay, let's close this. Then let's go to our app service. And we're going to add a request in here for searching the app. So let's add the post request in here. Let's close it. Okay, the next change I want to make is to our user page. So let's go to user and index page. I'm just going to paste the new code in here. And if we go to the actual page now, let's take a look in here. So if we go to the user page, you can see I've changed the layout a bit. So now we have the name here, email here, and the logout button right over here. Then we have a list of our reports. And we have the status over here, works offline, comment, and the link to it, and the link goes to the actual page of the app. Now we also have pagination in here. Cool. So let's take a look into the code for a bit. So on mounted, we are getting the results with my reports, and you can see we're taking the data, next page URL, and total amount, which goes in here, the value, and the reports, of course, are going in the page over here. Then we also have a button that calls the load next page, and that will just load the next page with using the next page URL. Okay, one really quick fix I want to do is that I want to go to the loading component, and I want to change the class in here. I don't like it taking 80% of the, so before it was taking the 80% of the vertical height. Don't really like that. I just added some padding to it. So now if we go, for example, in here, this page of course doesn't load because our data format has changed that comes from the API, but you can see now it appears on top and it just has some padding. Cool, let's close these things. Next, let's go and fix our app details page. I'm just going to put all the new code in here. Basically what changed is that now we're taking the details using this type. So app details, you can see it changed. It now has a key for app and a key for reports. Then we also have a load next page. This is going to be for the reports of the app. Okay, let's save this. Let's see how it works. And if we go to this app, for example, you can see we have all the information in here. This is the same as before. I've also added, in case this is empty, I'm going to have this in here. Let's actually find an app that has multiple reports. So if we go in here, we can see the fake ads, and we see it has 2 reports. Okay, so that one looks much nicer now. Next, let's also update our main page. So if we go in here, I'm just going to paste the new code. And what changed in here is that the search functionality now works. And whenever we search for something, I'm actually hiding all these other sections and only showing the search results. So we can take a look in here. If we do have search results, we only show the apps that were coming from the search results request. And we have this handle search in here. So let's try that now. If we search for something by title, okay, we have now Minecraft. If we clear, and you can see there's nothing else in here. So if we close this, let's maybe take a look at this watermelon game. Okay, so again, you can just go in there and let's search for one again. You can see that it works fine. Cool, let's close these now. Okay, let's give our app a quick test. Let's search for this new package I got from the Play Store. We're gonna search for it, nothing found. Okay, so let's go in here and report it in here. Put the package name in here. Let's say this game is too hard. Let's submit this. Okay, we got a toast successful. Let's go in here. We can see that we did get a message in our Slack. So let's reject it. Cool. The report has been rejected. Let's go back to our page. Let's actually make this full screen. And if we go to our user, okay, we can see in here that it was rejected. So that means we should be able to create another report. So if we go in here, report this app, this game is still too hard. Okay, report this. Cool. Let's go back to Slack. We got it. So now we can actually publish it. Okay, let's go back to our page and go to our user. Cool. So we can see that this has been published now. If we go to the page about the app, we can see our report in here. And we can also see it on the front page. Okay, the last thing in this video I want to do is that I want to actually get some favorite icons, fav icons in here for the website. So for that, I usually go to real fav icon generator. You can click on here and you can put your own icon in there and it will generate some files for you. And in my case, I've already generated those. So we're just gonna go into the public folder. We're gonna paste them all in. So let's do that. Let's just remove this one. And we're going to rename this one in here. Okay, you can see how it looks, basically like this. And let's close this. And then we need to go into our Noxt config and actually refer to those files. And we can do that by adding this code in here. So in the head, we want to add some meta tags and some link tags. And all of these refer to the files that we have in here. So let's save this. Let's go back to our local host. Okay, now you can see it changed in here. Cool. So I think that's all we wanted to do for this website for now. In the next video, we're actually going to publish it to DigitalOcean using Laravel Forge. Cool. See you in the next one.